I never expected that something my brother left me could completely tear my family apart. When he passed away, he left me his mountain lodge, a property worth $1,380,000. I know what you're thinking. That's amazing. What a gift. And yes, on paper, it sounds like a dream come true, but the reality was nothing like I imagined. From the moment the will was read, my life turned into a nightmare I couldn't have prepared for. My own family, people I had trusted my entire life, started looking at me differently. Suddenly, I was the enemy in my own home. And the most shocking part, they were willing to go to extreme lengths, even breaking the law, to get it from me. Tell me honestly, what would you do if your family tried to take something that was rightfully yours, something that was left to you by a loved one? Would you fight back, or let them destroy you just to satisfy their greed? It all started a few months ago when my brother, Mark, passed away unexpectedly. He was only in his late 40s, full of life, always planning trips to the mountains where he had built this beautiful lodge over the years. He loved that lodge more than anything, and he had told me countless times how he wanted me to have it if anything ever happened to him. At the time, I didn't really think much about it. Mark and I were close, but we weren't the kind of siblings who shared everything. Still, when he handed me the keys and said, "This is yours now, make it your place," I felt honored and grateful. I never realized how something that was supposed to bring joy could ignite so much hatred in my own family. The trouble began the day the lawyer called to read the will. My parents and younger sister were there, sitting in the small office, smiling politely, acting like they were happy for me. But I could see the way their eyes flicked toward me, the subtle tension in their posture. The will clearly stated that the lodge was to go entirely to me and nothing was left for anyone else. My parents were stunned, but my sister, Lisa, gave me a look that I'll never forget, a mixture of envy, disbelief, and something darker, something that I didn't want to name at first. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just shock. But within a week, the messages started coming. My parents called me almost every day just to talk. But every conversation turned into a lecture about how I shouldn't take advantage of the family. And maybe Mark wouldn't have wanted this. Lisa, on the other hand, became more aggressive. She would drop hints like, it would be such a shame if something happened to that lodge before you even enjoyed it. I laughed it off at first, thinking she was joking, but the tone in her messages grew sharper, almost threatening. I decided to visit the lodge for the first time a week after the will was read. It was breathtaking, towering pines, snow-dusted peaks, and the lodge itself, a two-story masterpiece with wooden beams, a massive stone fireplace, and panoramic windows overlooking the mountains. Standing there, I could feel Mark's presence. I could see the love he had poured into every corner. But as I walked through the rooms, my phone kept buzzing. Every time I glanced at it, there were texts from Lisa, my parents, even distant relatives, all hinting, suggesting, and sometimes outright asking me to sell it or share it with them. Then came the confrontation. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was in the lodge, unpacking some of Mark's old belongings, when the sound of a car door slamming echoed through the driveway. I went outside and found my parents and Lisa standing there. They didn't just drop by to see me. They came with a plan. My father spoke first in that calm, almost rehearsed tone. "We think it's only fair if you let us have a say in what happens to the lodge. Mark wouldn't have wanted you to keep it all to yourself." I could feel my chest tighten. I wanted to scream, to remind them that Mark had explicitly said it was mine, but I kept my voice steady. "The will is very clear," I said. "It's mine. I can choose what to do with it." Lisa laughed then, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was cold, calculated. "You'll regret this," she said, turning on her heel. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. They started showing up unannounced at the lodge, claiming family visits that felt more like staking claims. I would come home from work and my parents would be there, wandering through rooms I hadn't even had the chance to decorate. Lisa started posting cryptic messages on social media, suggesting that I was being selfish, greedy, and even heartless. I could feel the walls closing in, my own family slowly turning against me, all because of a building. It wasn't just a lodge to them. It was power, status, proof that I had something they didn't. I tried reasoning. I invited them to sit down, explained that I didn't want to sell the lodge, and that Mark had made his wishes clear, but nothing worked. Every conversation turned into manipulation. My parents would guilt me, reminding me of all they had done for me, trying to make me feel ungrateful. Lisa would flirt with me with anger, constantly testing boundaries, seeing what she could get away with. I started losing sleep. I began feeling like I was constantly being watched, like I couldn't enjoy my inheritance in peace. And then came the breaking point. One night, I received a call from the lodge caretaker, a man who had worked with Mark for years. His voice trembled as he said, "Someone tried to break into the lodge tonight." My heart sank. I rushed up to the property immediately, driving through winding mountain roads in the dark, imagining the worst. When I arrived, nothing was physically damaged, but the back door had scratches, like someone had tried to pry it open. And then I noticed tire tracks in the snow that didn't belong to the caretaker or me. Someone had been there, testing the waters, seeing if they could take what was mine. That's when I realized it wasn't just words or manipulation anymore. They were willing to cross a line to steal from me. I knew I had to act, but I also didn't want to destroy my family entirely. I installed cameras, changed the locks, and started documenting everything. I also reached out to a lawyer, someone who could make it absolutely clear that the lodge was legally mine, and any attempts to interfere would be considered trespassing or worse. But knowing it was mine on paper didn't make the anxiety go away. Every time I heard a car in the driveway, my stomach twisted. Every message from my sister made my blood boil, and the guilt that I was standing up for myself against my own family was suffocating. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have handed it over to keep peace in the family, or would you have stood firm, even if it meant losing their love? It's a question I asked myself every single day during those weeks. Eventually, I decided to confront them directly. I invited my parents and Lisa to the lodge under the guise of a family dinner. I wanted them to see, in person, that I was calm, rational, and prepared to defend what was mine. As we sat in the living room, I laid it all out. Every message, every threat, every attempt to manipulate or intimidate me. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just presented the facts. And then I told them that I loved them, but the lodge was non-negotiable. I explained that I wasn't trying to hurt them, but I would take legal action if anyone tried to interfere. The tension in that room was palpable. I could see the shock on my parents' faces, the realization that their manipulation hadn't worked. Lisa's lips were pressed into a thin line, but there was a flicker of respect, or maybe fear, in her eyes. It wasn't easy, and I won't lie, it hurt more than I ever thought it could. But that night, something shifted. They stopped showing up uninvited. The texts, the social media digs, the veiled threats, they all slowed down. It wasn't perfect, but boundaries had been set, and I had taken back control. Now, months later, the lodge feels like mine again. I've restored Mark's space, adding small touches that remind me of him while making it my own. I still see my family, but with a new understanding of respect and limits. The lesson I learned is brutal but simple. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they can't be toxic. Just because someone is supposed to love you doesn't mean they won't try to take what is rightfully yours. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only way to preserve what's important, even if it's painful. If you've ever been in a situation where family greed or jealousy threatened something you loved, you know how complicated and heartbreaking it can be. That's why I want to hear from you. Like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.